Hey everyone, good evening, and thanks for checking in. I know it's pretty late, and I am sure that you're going to be glad that we can do this study late into the evening. So we know that we have a test on Tuesday, and there's going to be basically in class tomorrow 3 sections. There's going to be 15 multiple choices. Yeah. So you've got the idea. Pretty straightforward, nothing crazy. You should all be able to find. Then basically you've got something of what I would call one-word answers, or even a few, I wouldn't go as far as a paragraph, but there's some paragraph words that I want you to look at. And then the next one is going to be the identify the pictures. Okay? So if tomorrow, a lot of things you need to know about centuries, for example. Make sure I'm not asking you for definite dates, but centuries of people. When was Muhammad? When was Louis VII? When was Gregory VII the Pope? The thing that I can tell most of you are probably worried about are some of these images, so let's just very briefly go over them. So this image here, if you were to be able to look at that, we're obviously talking about the decline of the Roman Empire, okay? So you want to talk about why there was a decline of the Roman Empire, and how it was, when it was, and then all these various people who invaded, the Lombards, yeah? You want to talk about, you're going to be able to talk about the Franks, and so many of you know so many people to do with the Franks now, yeah? You're going to be able to talk about how maybe if you look at the interesting way of looking at this, that all of these people start to invade from the north, whereas we know in the reverse happened, that the Islamic Empire is going to push that way. You're going to look at that, you're going to talk about the importance of Constantinople later on. This is kind of like a really easy question in my opinion. You're going to be able to talk about the Angles, how they go to England, and what they form. Okay. The second one, more to do with the Vikings and the Muslims. You've got the Vikings coming in from the north, the Muslims coming in from the south, okay? Noticing, always remembering that Spain was a stronghold of the Muslims. You've got this picture on feudalism. You talk about the nobility and the serfs. You could always talk about a pyramid. Pyramid's always a great way to teach history, yeah? I know you all think that, and I know you're all passionate about history. If you were to get this symbol, this would be a tough one, I know. This would be to do with feudal life. But then in a way, as soon as you see that, you could say this was a manor house, and a manor house was on a manor, and on a manor there was people who lived. There's always going to be a church, there was going to be monks, there was going to be serfs, definitely a knight to help protect the lord in the castle. So that's all that homework that you did there. So you'd look at that image, and then you'd start to argue why the history needs to be interpreted by reading that picture, but with the picture of what life was like in that part of history. The code of chivalry, knights, protection, virtue. You're going to talk about crusades. Why the men who were soldiers were virtuous. Why there were crusades. Medieval life, you don't need to worry about that one. Then you have this whole thing about the prophet and the emperor. The prophet, you're going to start talking about Muhammad and the emperor focus. We start to have this battle. That's going to be a tough one. You're going to be able to talk about medieval imagery there. You're going to be able to talk about the language of Arabic. You're going to be able to talk about what you know from the early imperial days. But if I put that one on there, there's not going to be many lines, so don't worry about that one. Heraclius, let's not do that one. I think you're all glad about that. What is this one? The Age of the Caliphs. If you look at that, you've obviously got the idea that color, if you look at the idea there, you've got different colors with different expansion. This would be a great one to talk about the various caliphs that you have. Yeah, Abu Bakr, for example. I'm not going to give you all of the answer, but can you see how you would do that? You'd go back and forth, looking over the history, using this, the ages here that are portrayed, talking about the expansion, and at whose cost is the expansion? So anything that's to do with Islam, you're always going to be able to talk about how it is basically always going to be in direct contradistinction to Christianity. Yeah? I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. It's a great thing to do, hey? Okay, this one's an easy one. Mecca, the pilgrimage, Kaaba. Who goes there? Why? How long? Orientation of prayer. You always have to pray towards Mecca. Remembering that great movie that we saw, Black Hawk Down. Okay, Caliph Omar entering Jerusalem. If you saw that one, you talk about how this is setting the scene for ye olde crusades. Okay? Who's in there? Why? Why are they on camels? Why are they traveling? What century are in? Who are the crusades? When are they going to last to? Okay? So that would be another important image. Now here, this is a little, the expansion of Islam. I do believe that this one, for most of you, would be pretty easy. What I've shown over here, remember, is that China, India, Byzantium, North Africa, and Spain are places in the 7th century where people are going to expand Islam. Centuries, who's involved, which people. Remember, anytime you're going to have the expansion of Islam, you're always going to be able to talk about who is against Islam. So even though this slide doesn't have a lot of crusaders on there, you're certainly going to be able to talk about it. Now, who's this one going to be? The Battle of Tours, AD 732. So remember, in the 8th century, you're going to have Charles Martel. What was his nickname? Who was he fighting for? Why on earth was Charles Martel strong in the first place? Because he was a Frankish institution trying to respond to the problems of the expanding Islam. Remember, Lombards. Why are the Lombards expelled? Who are they expelled by? Who did they give the land to? Who was it? Which one and why? That's kind of straightforward, yeah? Then the next image I'd like us to look at, Carolingian Empire. So obviously, Charlemagne. Now, when I look at this one for Charlemagne, now that we can talk about the size of the empire, where Aachen is, why it's important, how he unites people, you're obviously going to talk about so many things. Holy Roman Emperor, you're going to talk about Christmas Day, what century, what year, and why. But as you look at this map, you already see Spain is already conquered by Islam. The Anglo-Saxons, who do you think is ruling roughly at this time in England and why? And then the Byzantine Empire. You're going to talk about who's ruling Constantinople. Why is there Constantinople? Why is there the Eastern Empire? You know? And then you'd be able to say, obviously on this one, also the collapse of the Roman Empire. You know, as we go through all this, gentlemen, I'm just trying to let you see that you know so much when you look at some of these things to draw out very valuable information. What is this image about? Investiture crisis. What is the investiture crisis? Was this the only example of an investiture crisis? If so, okay. If not, with whom and why? Who are the figures here? What is at stake? Why is it important for the church to have authority? Why did the Holy Roman Emperor want to keep on installing his own bishop with not only secular power? Yeah, it wasn't just secular power he wanted to give them, because the secular state had fallen apart. He also wanted to give them sacred power. And why? Council at Clermont, November the 27th, 1095. Which pope? Deuswald. Why does he say it? To whom does he say it? What building are they in here? A cathedral. Who are these? They're statues. Who's gathered here? All these nobles from Europe waiting for a cause to fight. Why are they wanting to fight? Because they're young men. The young men, they always get bored in times of peace. They're happy to respond. But also they have Christian principles to uphold. The next image that we want to talk about that's important, make sure you know these three figures, who they do, what they do, why they do it. Remember that Raymond is the only one who gets to Jerusalem. In which crusade? Where are they from? This map would be an easy one, yeah. You just have to try and use all your knowledge to talk about the crusades in general, who they are, from where they go to. You're always going to involve Constantinople, yeah? You never want to forget Constantinople. Acre, remember, is where Richard the Lionheart ends up on his way to Jerusalem. Antioch is one of those three men we just saw before. Which one of these three ended up staying in Antioch and why? Okay, remember we took that in our notes. Make sure you remember the Crusades, generally 11th, more or less to the 13th century. Images here, Saladin, who is he? Why is he feared? what is important about him. You've obviously got the whole Richard the Lionheart, brave Englishman that he was. Did he speak English? No, he only spoke French. Who were his parents and why? Okay, you have Henry II, not Henry IV, Henry II. Um, and his mother, Eleanor. Then, of course, you could talk from Eleanor back to King Louis, who divorced her. Why did he divorce her? The image that brings a little humor to it. Good old Frederick Barbarossa, an old man who decides to go to the Crusades, drowns on his horse, crossing a river, going into the Holy Land. And then finally, last but not least, the crown of thorns, Sainte-Chapelle, Louis IX. Obviously, you watched that great National Geographic show last week, and to that, I hope you've remembered a little bit. So, gentlemen, it's going to be easy. All you have to do is to remember, think logically, don't panic, and pray. I bid you good night until tomorrow.